go. So now we're streamed live on Facebook Live. If you don't know about Facebook Live, check the bottom of your app. It's all in there and it gets addictive. It's brilliant. Anyway, so I want to welcome you all and say just a huge thank you for coming along. It's the first Facebook and SheSays collaboration together. And I'm super glad to see so many faces, so a lot of familiar ones too, which is quite nice, and loads of gratin tops amongst the audience inexplicably, but everyone seems to be wearing gratin. And we've got a bunch of amazing speakers today, so it's all going to be lots of good fun. I just need to make sure that I'm on the right slides because I get a bit confused about this stuff. But anyway, welcome, I'm going to crack on. And the first thing that I want to say is that my name's Julie and I'm a workaholic. But actually I'm kind of a recovering workaholic, is the truth. And I kind of want to explain that I'm working at Facebook, and I work at Facebook, I'm also part of SheSays, but I'm working here kind of to be in rehab a little bit from my workaholism. So I'm a creative strategist here at Facebook and Instagram, and I'm part of a group called, of the company called Creative Shop, and we're specifically a bunch of ex-creative directors from advertising, all strat directors, and I was in places like Mother, RGA, Sunshine. We all came over to work at Creative Shop specifically to help brands, ad agencies and media agencies to make all their advertising better on our platforms, which is no really mean feat, because there are 3 million advertisers a day on Facebook and Instagram. So we're stretched pretty thin and we're pretty busy, and we have a really good time, and essentially we're kind of like mini ad agencies in people in some ways, except we're kind of consultants too. It's very bonkers and very fun and we love it. But I guess the reason that it's rehab for me as a workaholic is because this company has some pretty amazing principles when it comes to work-life balance, and I haven't always. And actually, we have this program here called Fuel. And I'm not going to kind of like, you know, drink the Kool-Aid too much about this company because it's pretty amazing, but you can kind of read about that stuff online. But actually, the Fuel program is something that I find is crucial, totally vital for my well-being and my health and my workaholic rehab. And what Fuel is essentially is finding work-life balance to be one of the most important things to focus on as a business. So Fuel is incredibly important, it's taken incredibly seriously, and it essentially means that you prioritise your work-life balance. We do things like we write a plan, a Fuel plan of what we plan to do, but we do it in retrospect. So I pretend that I'm on New Year's Eve 2016 and I write a whole plan of what I've achieved that year, half professional and half personal, and managers help you to achieve both. So it's things like that, and it's really, we do lots of other things like surveys and scores and ways in which you can basically balance your work life better. But Fuel is a fundamental thing, and that's essentially why I work at this company. One of them are very many reasons. So I want to kind of now take you back, you know, like in the films when they do that whole like wobbly thing, which is taking you back in time. I'm going to do that for a second. So I want to take you back. So it's 2012. It's 9 AM on a Monday morning. It's the agency that I work at. It's their agency weekly status meeting, like the same thing that happens at most agencies. I'm standing at the back. I start to sweat more than usual. I get heart palpitations a lot, and then I kind of start to black out. And that's not kind of too bonkers, because at that point I'm blacking out like 20 times a day. But this time it was kind of a different blackout because I couldn't get up again. And what happened was I kind of just slinked to the floor at the back of this status meeting, and they got worried about me, obviously. They got me a cab, and I went home and I never went back. And essentially that was burnout. That was me having, I then had to have 2 months off work. I was in bed for 2 months actually, sorry. Then I had 6 months off work. Then for about another 18 months I could only really work part-time. And then sort of 3.5 years later, I'm still suffering the side effects, all from the burnout. So the burnout is an actual thing. It's called adrenal fatigue. It's an actual health condition. And it's where your adrenal gland doesn't work anymore, or doesn't work in the way that it should anymore, so it's kind of knackered. So it really doesn't produce all the stuff it needs to produce, and we're delicate ecosystems, so it knocks everything out of whack. So I'm now suffering from something called postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. I've got chronic fatigue, I have active Epstein-Barr, I have estrogen dominance, I have Hashimoto's thyroiditis, I have insulin resistance, I have a hell of a lot, I have to read them off list, I have a hell of a lot of health problems, all as a knock-on effect of my burnout. So this is really a cautionary tale, and this whole event essentially is a cautionary tale. Because I feel ill every single day, and I have to take a lot of painkillers and different drugs and different things to keep me going every single day. And ultimately, I don't want any of you to do that, and I want as many people as possible to learn from my experience, and many of the experiences of the people that we've got here tonight, but that's the reason that this event exists. So thank you for coming, it's super important, I'm super glad that loads of people showed, and I really hope that we have an impact. And the first person that I want to introduce is a fantastic, fantastic woman. So actually, the last time I shared a stage with this lady, I was feeling so poorly that I had 2 ibuprofen, 2 paracetamol and 2 glasses of wine at high speed before I went on stage to talk, which is kind of not a good thing, right? I don't know if that's actually advisable. I would suggest it's not, and I haven't had any wine or paracetamol tonight, you'd be very glad to know. But this lady is amazing. She's incredibly infectious with her enthusiasm and her energy. She's got a bonkers laugh, which is also slightly terrifying. And I'm going to call her Pip Flaming Glad Jameson. Welcome on stage.
How amazing is this place? It's incredible. I run a startup, and so walking into somewhere like Facebook where they've got a sweet shop, I'm like, my team is in the room, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm so sorry, one day. Anyway, my name is Pip. I'm the founder of The Dots. We're baby new here in the UK, so put your hands up if you've heard of The Dots. Oh my god, I love you. So yeah, I guess I started a creative business. This is actually my second creative business. I've burned out a number of times, and when Julie was talking about this topic, I thought it was so amazing. And actually, to be completely personal, when Julie was really sick doing the talk, my mum was also really sick just before I was allowed to go on stage. So we were both like hugging each other and trying to work out how are we going to do our jobs and deal with things like that. And I think we always underestimate that we all have really high-powered jobs, but we also have personal lives and things go on back there, and it's really hard juggling it. And I found it really, 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 really hard juggling it. And so I'm going to just show some kind of tips I've learned the really, really hard way, just hopefully to avoid some of the burnout I've experienced. So I'm just going to give you a bit of a snapshot of the journey and kind of the crazy moments along the way. So I started the business in Australia. I used to work for MTV, and the easiest way, I guess, to describe The Dots is a bit like LinkedIn for the creative industries. There's a lot more to what we do, but that's probably the easiest way. And I started the business because I was working at MTV, and I was finding it really challenging to find great creatives to the business. And that sounds really mad because it's MTV and we should attract all these people, but weirdly that was also part of the problem. If I put a job on a normal job board, I'd get around 1,000 people applying for a role. And I was really time poor, and being able to go through and sift and find great people was really challenging. So what sort of happened at MTV is we all hired, because it was the easiest way, hired mates and mates and mates and mates. But what then happened at MTV is we just ended up with this incredibly homogenous workforce. So everyone had the same background, everyone lived in Australia in Bondi, like literally. And there wasn't any diversity in skills, ideas, talent coming to the business, and that can be really, really, really dangerous creatively. So we decided to try and fix the problem, and so we started building the platform from Australia. I guess this is where we see ourselves sitting on the ecosystem that's out there at the moment. We do 3 things. We help creators promote themselves online, we help them network and collaborate, but the most passionate thing I'm about is actually helping people connect with creative opportunities. And that's creative opportunities that they deserve, not just because they've got a mate at that company. We do a lot of work on diversity. Stuff that we've done was, for example, for International Women's Day, we did a complete female takeover of the dots. Julie was one of them. Interviewed a number of creative leaders on there, advice, female creative leaders on advice getting into the industry. And yeah, it's just exciting stuff like that that I'm really passionate about. Other stuff we do is, when I started actually here in the UK, we had this massive sign-up rate of men, and I think we were running at over 70% of our community was white men. So we now have an internal policy where if you go to our curation page, it always has to be 50-50 male-female, has to be over 30% minorities, and the reason being is we wanted to basically make it a place that feels really comfortable for everyone. And what's been really exciting from that point is we're now running at 62% female. LinkedIn, by the way, is nearly 70% man. So yeah, I guess we're all about connecting the dots across the industries. Creatives promote themselves online. It's completely free for creatives. This is the amazing Julie. He's got like a shitload of followers, I just noticed. But my mantra in life is, life is short, work somewhere awesome. You can have your cake and eat it. You know, there are amazing places like Facebook that are looking after people's well-being as well as their skills and giving them opportunities. I don't know why I keep looking backwards. There is a screen just there, so I don't know. So I just wanted to give you a bit of a snapshot of, I guess, the journey I've been on. If you can see in that top quadrant there, this is my happy, sad graph. That top quadrant is when I'm on cloud 9, we're going to take over the world, everything is absolutely amazing. The bottom sort of darker quadrant is my burnout quadrant. This is where I'm crying on my husband's shoulders. What the fuck am I doing? Can I swear at Facebook? Yes. Sorry, what am I doing? This is way too hard. I'm pushing myself too hard. I'm working 6-7 days a week. I just want to give up. I just want a job. And the reality of what I've been through is this. It has been the most insane roller coaster starting a creative business. It has been the happiest and most wonderful times of my life. But I have at points burnt myself too hard, to the detriment of the business, to the detriment of managing my team. I won't go through all the highs and lows, but you know, there's been massive highs. I mean, I started the business in Australia 5 years ago. We built it up in Australia as being the biggest network for creators over there. We were profitable, which is really unusual for tech startups. But there's been some absolutely horrific burnout points as well. I used to work 7 days. I worked 7 days for about 3 years, which was just stupid. We nearly ran out of money 2 times, and I can't tell you how stressful that is when you're building a business and you've seen it scale, and then suddenly you don't know if you can pay the staff you have. The hardest burnout point, you can see that dip that goes off the scale. So 2 years ago, I moved to London to start the business over here, at which point my then business partner, Matt, got married, had a baby, and basically didn't want to take the risk of expanding internationally. And I'd spent all these years building this successful business in Australia, and I was like, oh my God, like, I can't believe we made it work in Australia, not global. But when 2 partners want to take a business in different directions, it's really challenging. So I ended up having to sell my business in Australia. I acquired the global technology rights. I seed funded the business here, and I had to start completely from scratch. I nearly lost the plot, to be honest. I had to take myself on a 2-month retreat to Spain just to kind of get over it. It was kind of a bit like losing a baby, just to get over the shock of it. And I learned some really valuable lessons that actually looking after myself was really, really important. Since then, it's been amazing. My lovely team works way over there, because, sorry, I'm going to embarrass them. The amazing Leanne used to actually work for me in Australia, so she's come over to the UK. Actually, 3 of my staff have actually come over from Australia. The amazing Sophie, I actually had to fire on her first day of work from my old business, and she still joined us for the 2nd round. So I guess I wanted to show the things I really have learned the hard way. Firstly, I've got much better at recognizing when I'm starting to burn out. I used to just go for hell for leather and not really realize that, and this graph has actually helped me a lot. So this is the performance arousal graph. Arousal is probably the wrong word. But it started actually in sports. And basically you'll see on one axis you've got performance, and that's your performance per hour. So that's how much productivity you're getting in a single hour. The other axis is arousal, and what we mean by that is it's kind of how hard you're being pushed by your boss, the hours you're working, what you're kind of taking on. And actually, as you start getting more and more pushed at work, your performance per hour will actually increase because you're energized, you're being given more responsibility, you're learning, it's great, it's really exciting. The problem comes when you start reaching that kind of peak. If you start pushing yourself too hard, you start basically reducing your performance per hour. And what's really important about this is you've got to then take time off, because if you feel like you should be working harder and harder and harder because you've got more and more work to do, it's actually counterintuitive because your performance per hour is going down. And I use this as a tool with my team at work. We're going through a massive product overhaul at the moment. Harry, my product manager, every now and again has this deer in the headlights look, and I take him to this graph and say, where are you? And if he's too far over, he's got to take a long weekend. But it's just really important to kind of start recognizing when you are burning out. Other things I found really important for non-burnout is I surround myself with, well, I avoid the drains. It sounds awful, but I do. I surround myself with happy, positive people. Those aren't yes people. I need people around me that can challenge me. But they're very much people that are based on solutions, talking things out, not the kind of people that get moody. I hate that kind of passive-aggressive, taking the piss thing. I just found it was just really unproductive for my day. So big advice, avoid the drains. Other things, I find it really hard to exercise because I'm so busy. Who else finds that? Yeah. Because I keep going to these talks and everyone's like, yeah, I do yoga and, run and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, Jesus, I run a business for God's sake. So I've actually now, the best way I get around this is I'm a book junkie. I kind of have to be because I run a business and I'm trying to learn everything as I go along. So what I do is I walk to work in the morning listening to a book. So it's always a workbook in the morning. So and then I walk home from work listening to like more of a trashy novel. I put one of my cooler, trashier novels, which is A Year Living Danishly, which is a great book about why Danish people are the most happy people in the world, so definitely read it. My other books are so trashy. Julie asked for a recommendation. I was too embarrassed to send them to you. They're so bad. But it basically it gets me doing exercise and it calms me down at the other end. The other thing I've learned in terms of burnout is that I can't do everything, and I've been really bad at trying to take on too much, trying to get involved in too much, and I have literally done a lot of internal thinking on what am I good at, what am I not good at. And when I left my business in Australia, I actually had a 360 performance review done myself. Has anyone done a 360 review? Okay, yeah, okay. It's really confronting. Like, basically, one of my investors in Australia interviewed all my team, contractors, other investors, clients, and basically the interview was like, what is Pip good at? What is she not good at? And what can she work on? And the process was horrifically confronting. Actually, the results were sent the day before we were launching here in the UK, and I made my husband read it, and he said, don't read it before you launch, because you'll get too depressed. So what that taught me was actually I had to look internally, and reading it made me recognize what I should be focusing on, and I was just burning myself out focusing on things that I obviously was really shit at. And I've just become much better at going, okay, I'm not very good at this, and then bringing on a mentor who is. This is the amazing Sir John Hegarty, who is chairman of my board and just a brilliant mentor to me and Caroline. He's your, yeah. So, surrounding yourself with people that are way better at what you're bad at is really great for burnout. The other thing that I have found, I used to work, does anyone work from home when they get home after work? Yeah. I was terrible at this. I'd finish work, go home, start working again. What am I doing? So I basically forced myself that now I can't work from home. I live on a boat. So, it is totally, there is no office, it's a nightmare. So I'm not saying everyone buy a boat. You can, it's really great by the way, it's really cheap to live in London. But make sure when you go home, make it your home, because you have to have that separation, you have to get that brain space, and I found that really important. The other thing we do, or I do, is I probably shouldn't be up here because I do still sort of burn myself out. I don't really take holidays, partly because I get kind of bored by day 6, but I do now make sure that every 3 months I take myself away for a long weekend to a juice retreat. I do juicing and yoga and meditation. I think the best thing about it actually is there's no Wi-Fi, so it's just a digital detox, but it does reset me, so do find the thing that works for you. And the final thing is, smiling is a way of tricking your body that you're happier. I'm a bit of a weirdo. When I write emails, I smile because it makes the emails nicer. It really works. But I found that as I've smiled more, I've generally released energy and just been happier. And you know, there's been so much work that actually by smiling you trick your brain, you're happy, and you help yourself relax. So smiling, laughing, just generally having fun is better for burnout. And you know what, if you're working in a company that is not supporting you emotionally, not allowing you to smile, be happy, not kind of caring about your welfare, I swear to God, just get out of there. It's just, there are places that look after you, and just start smiling again. So, thank you.
You didn't really know well. You said smiling. It's a good thing, smiling. I'm not very good at it necessarily. Grimace, I think. I'm going to try and smile, I always look like I'm grimacing, which is not particularly good. Anyway, I think that's fascinating and brilliant, and actually quite pertinent in a way, because we spoke about this previously, and I want to introduce the next guest, the next speaker, and actually she's kind of my coach here at Facebook, which is a little bit bonkers in that kind of she's probably now going to be coaching me when we finish this on what I could be doing or did do, or all this stuff. But I think that what's quite intriguing is the first meeting that I had with Yif, who's about to come on stage, who's amazing. She actually told me that I needed to immediately book 2 holidays and do 30% less work, which is pretty much the nicest thing that anyone's ever said to me, or definitely I feel like the most helpful thing that anyone said to a workaholic. And I love her for that, and so I went away and I booked a yoga retreat, not dissimilar to actually Pip's retreat story, and I booked a writing retreat. Nobody has to go and book fancy retreats, like you can go and just camp in the back of your car in Wales or whatever, but which I also do, by the way. And in Scotland, which is quite a lot. But anyway, so Yif is amazing. She is obviously on my wavelength, because that's what she said in the first meeting that I had with her. She's had a fascinating career, she'll tell you a tiny bit about, and I think she's some form of genius. And we're very, very lucky to have her here with us tonight. It's Yif, I'm going to pronounce it badly, but Yifat Arnstein.
So I'm here. Can you hear? Yeah, cool. So I'm Yifat Arnstein, and everybody calls me Eve, which is not much shorter, but for some reason easier. So what do you reckon, the short or long hair? Long. Short? Long? My daughter doesn't like short hair, so I have to have it long. So very nice to be here with you today. So I do executive coaching here at Facebook. And I'll tell you a little bit about my background, just for the context. So I was born in the States, hence the American accent, even though it's distorted. Grew up in Israel afterwards, then Singapore, back to New York for 10 years, and it's been 3 years here in London. So when I'm asked where are you from, not sure, actually. I'm sure everybody has similar stories. The majority of my career was spent in software companies, both in the financial industry and in advertising. So I'm kind of familiar with what you guys are going through. And I've probably done every role. Oh, I didn't even notice. You can just talk and talk and talk. I've probably done every role you can do in a software company, and that's kind of on my journey to figure out what I want to do. So that's kind of my background, and then I heard about coaching, and that's where I am today. So I want to tell you a little bit about how to prevent burnout. I do executive coaching here at Facebook. I also coach startup founders at accelerators. So I deal with burnout a lot. And it's a simple solution. It's not easy, but it's simple. There's two factors that really come into play when you talk about burnout. One is your work, what you actually do for work. And I call it play to your strengths. And we'll talk a little bit about what that means. And the other side of the equation is really what I call your ecosystem. That's everything that goes on that you need to function, to bring your best self forward. And that is, unfortunately, we don't have a recipe for, because it's so individual that you have to figure it out for yourself. Okay, so let's understand a little bit about what this is. I want to ask you guys a question. Do you have the opportunity to do what you do best every day? Who says yes? Not all day every day, but every day. Oh, this is really good. This is really good. Currently, in the workforce population, 2 out of 10 say yes. And what's behind this? Many times I ask this question, and people say, actually, or they say this in their head, what is it that I do best? And if you're in that situation, if it ran through your head, there's more to be done. Because this is self-work that needs to be figured out. What is it that I do best? And we're going to go into the strengths. Activities that when you do them, you feel strong. You are in the flow. Have you heard about flow? Flow. When you're in it, you don't notice time going by, right? It's just, you're doing what you're meant to be doing. So those are your strengths. Those are the activities. And what you do, bless you, what you do is you find what these strengths are, and you try to prolong these activities and have as many as you can. Okay, that's the trick. Now, the downside of this is that we have weaknesses as well, right? So the weaknesses are activities that when you do them, you feel weak and deflated. But the funny thing is, it's not necessarily correlated to how good you are at them. So you can be very good at something, and it can still be your weakness. For example, I'm really good at running errands. I can sit with a to-do list and hammer it out like a machine. But then I feel like I want to die. I feel like, what a waste of time. And so it's a weakness, even though I'm really good at it. And that's usually what causes people a lot of just being upset. Because you're kind of on this path, you're doing something, you're good at it. Maybe it even started in school, you were really good at it, you followed that, you kind of created a career, and then you thought, but I don't really like it, right? That's a lot of clients that I have that kind of went through a lot of years and then woke up feeling that. So that's a weakness. And I want to tell you a little story about strengths. My daughter really likes to draw, and it's funny because I thought about this when Julie invited me to speak about, in front of creative women, and I love creativity, but I'm really not good at anything artistic. So my daughter sat down and she said, let's draw, Mommy. I said, okay. And I'm drawing something very abstract. And then she says, oh, she's trying to engage me in the process. She says, oh, Mommy, have you taken a line for a walk? So that's my capabilities there. That's my strength in artistic. But this is the idea. This is figuring out for yourself what are your strengths, what do you really enjoy doing. And this doesn't necessarily mean you have to change jobs, you have to change companies. This can be found within your current role. You just have to understand which tasks, which activities you really enjoy doing, and try to do more of those and less of the things that are your weakness. Okay? And then your ecosystem. So that was work related. And the bottom line is, when you do work that you really enjoy, work doesn't seem like work. And it doesn't accelerate burnout. Okay? You feel a lot of satisfaction and you're good and you're not worried about that. The other side of the equation is your ecosystem. And this is where it becomes very individual. So your physical energy is the most important thing. Your sleep, how much sleep do you need? Does everyone know that about themselves? How much sleep do you need? Because you really need to test it and see what's the good thing for you. I know I need 8 hours. That's probably why I had only one child, because I can't deal with sleep deprivation. Exercise. And we were talking about it's really hard to exercise, but it depends what you need. Maybe, taking a yoga class once a week over the weekend is good. Maybe you walk to work, right? That's a way of exercise, but whatever it is you need, maybe just taking a walk during lunchtime, or maybe you have to go to the gym. Everyone is different, but figure out what you need and try to do it. And treat it like a religion, because that's what you need to function. And that's your responsibility, really. And eating. Do you need to be off wheat? Do you need to be off dairy? Can you eat anything you want? How about eating? Full stop. Some people forget. So just figuring out what the right kind of recipe for yourself is really important. And we have this tendency to think, oh no, I'm gonna just, work, like Rihanna, right? And just not do any of this. But you're not doing anyone a favor, right? Because you can't sustain it. Then the emotional energy, your mood. Pip talked about this. Nobody likes moody people, right? You have to figure it out. What do you need to function? How much time do you need to spend with friends, with family? How important are good relationships for you at work and outside of work? Play with it. Try to figure out what you need. Do you need once a week to meet friends at the bar for a drink? Do you need just quiet time for yourself? Maybe you need to go home once a week and just sit there and veg in front of the TV. I mean, everybody's different. You just have to figure out what is the best for yourself. Then your mental energy, your focus. What do you need to feel like you're doing your best at work? How to format the day. So it's very interesting because there's a behavioral economist called Dan Ariely, and he just came out with this research that shows that we all have 2 hours of cognitive clarity during the day. And those 2 hours are actually right when you're fully awake. So not right when you wake up in the morning, but when you're fully awake. So maybe an hour after you wake up. And those are your prime cognitive clarity hours during the day. And what do most people do? Commute, check Facebook, or look through their emails during your prime cognitive clarity, right? So instead, if people know that, you can design your day to accommodate what you do best. So maybe you go and you wake up, you meditate, and then you sit down at your favorite cafe and write for 2 hours, or build a plan, or whatever it is you do, draw something very pretty. Something to utilize your cognitive clarity. And then you come to work and everything can hit you and you'll be fine because you already feel this sense of accomplishment for the day. But there's many ways to play around with your time. I'm not sure how it is in the different places where you work. At Facebook, there's a lot of flexibility around designing your day to accommodate your best work, really. Okay, so that's something to take into account as well. Do I need to schedule a meeting with myself and book myself into a meeting room and sit there and think, so I don't get distracted by other people? Or, do I schedule meetings where we need to brainstorm at the second half of the day where everybody's a little bit tired and kind of get energy from other people? But if you put thought into it, and you're all creative, so I'm sure you can get creative in terms of ideas of how to design your day to be more effective, I think you'll benefit a lot from that. Purpose, feeling a sense of purpose and constant growth. That's something that's really important to us, and it's one of those things that's kind of categorized as important but not urgent. We all have a list of important, not urgent things that just sit there and kind of are not dealt with. And we need it. You need to feel that. What do? Do you schedule a course that you take once a year so you feel like you're developing? You have to check in with yourself and see if what you're doing work-wise, do you feel on board? Do you feel that you know what the purpose is, that you're a part of this mission? Check that. Talk to yourself and see what's going on. And if you need to grow, and if you need external training, if there's internal training that you can take, whatever it is, even conversations with friends, with peers, and understanding where people are, a lot of things can kind of feed the growth part of you. Just remember it. Try to think about that. So how do you do it? A lot of ideas. First of all, understanding that it's in your control. Sorry, I'm looking back, but I can't see. It's really small up here, and I'm kind of getting old. Understand that it's in your control. This is the main mistake about burnout. When you start feeling burnout, or when you're kind of fast-tracking towards it, it feels like it's happening to you, and you have no control over it. But actually, you do. And all of the stuff that I mentioned is up to you. You can do it. Nobody's preventing you. But there's this feeling that, oh, it's happening to me, and the work is expecting me to do this, and all kinds of things we tell ourselves in our heads which aren't necessarily happening. So it is in your control. Trial and error. Test different things. Try them out. See what works. Try different exercises. Try different social settings. Just see what works for you. And this is a part that I really like, having continuous, honest conversations with yourself in front of the mirror to check how you're doing. And why do I say in front of the mirror? Because when we talk to ourselves in our head, we can tell ourselves all kinds of stories. But when you look in the mirror, you're like, oh, that's bullshit, right? You can see yourself, and you can see when you're faking it or you're tricking yourself. If you look in the mirror and try this, it really works. You say, how am I doing? How am I feeling? What's going on? What excites me at work? What excites me at home? Where am I? If you have this conversation in the mirror, you'll be really surprised at what comes out. But have them continuous. And find accountability partners, colleagues, family, friends, whoever, your coach, anyone, to check in on you. And we just had a conversation earlier today of just peers at work. Check in on each other, see how you're doing. If you see someone with a deer in the headlights kind of look, say, how are you doing? You look a little bit off. How's it going? And do that. Find someone, and if you do this process and you come up with certain goals that you want to achieve, share those goals. And have people help you. Especially with exercise, if you tell your family that you're trying to accomplish, more on the exercise side or on the food side, and you tell people, they can help you. They can be like, do you want that second piece of cake? You need that kind of feedback. Things that are important to remember. You may think that if you work endless hours, you are doing your best job. But the thing that gets hurt is your judgment. When we work all hours, everything becomes personal because you make such a big personal sacrifice of your time. You come in the morning, you say hello to your boss, he doesn't answer, you develop this very elaborate story in your head of how he hates you and he hated your idea in the meeting yesterday, and very elaborate. And the more the days go by, the story gets stronger and bigger and more real. But he didn't hear you. That's all that happened. He just didn't hear you saying good morning, right? So this is where your judgment gets skewed, and you're not going to be delivering your best work. You're going to be emotional, you're not going to be making your best decisions. Okay, so it's not just a warm and fuzzy, good to have kind of thing. This is actual results driven. And manage your energy and play to your strength so that you bring your best self to what you do and it's sustainable. So it's not only that you're more effective, that you smile more, that people want to be around you more, that you're doing actual good work, but you can also maintain that over time, which is what's really important, to prevent stuff that we heard earlier. Okay? I know that was a ton and I was throwing it at you, but this stuff is really important. So, thank you.
Amazing, thank you. I feel very, very lucky, privileged to work with you. She's ace. Thanks so much, really fascinating stuff. I would say that the stuff that I've learned from you is really important, particularly I think about working when your brain works the most and being able to be flexible, which isn't massively always realistic. I know that everyone has schedules and they have to work within certain parameters, but just so you know, I'm basically having these conversations with all of the CCOs, like the male bosses of all of the companies in London at the moment, telling them that they need to be much more flexible in this sort of way, and the female bosses too, by the way, but there's a lot of those here. So it's not just a conversation that we're kind of echoing amongst ourselves. This is stuff that, as part of SheSays, Creative Equals, and as part of my job here at Facebook, we're having lots of conversations with lots of different people, telling them how they can change their whole business structure to actually work better for women and the needs of us in work-life balance. So I just wanted to make that sort of clear. So now we're going to speak to some amazing women who I'd like to get on stage, if they don't mind joining me for a second. The first lady is Caroline Pay. I'm going to introduce her properly in a second. Second being the amazing Nikki Hoffer. A round of applause, please. Fantastic, amazing, I can't pronounce her name very well, Kano? So I'm saying that I can't pronounce her name properly because it's not Ivory. And then there is the indomitable Vicky Maguire. I love Karen Pay's life social media in this, as she's sitting on the
You have an angel up there, so I thought I'd take a picture.
It's the blonde, isn't it? So, oh shit, I forgot my cards, which tell me everything's going on. And I'm allowed to say shit as well, as everyone's swearing at me. Thank you, actually. Sorry, they're my little cue cards to find out what I'm talking about, because things go up my head pretty quick. Thanks, ladies. So, I want to first talk to Caroline. Caroline hired me. Caroline hired me a few years ago without almost any portfolio, definitely no idea, but a very, very hairy creative partner. And that was, I think, possibly the reason we were called the blonde and the beard. Obviously, I had a massive beard back then. So Caroline is one of the managing partners and the deputy creative director of BBH in London, if you didn't know. She's also the wife of the Sunshine CCO Al McCouche, who's also my ex-boss, very weird. She's full of all the extracurricular, to be honest. She's just been telling me, actually I'm not going to mention what she's doing something very exciting on the side. But besides that, she's also a speaker at loads of different events. She's the champion of all sorts of amazing women's stuff in our industry. She does lots of great book crits and lots of basically industry events. She's also a mum, and because I'm quite nosy on her Instagram, I kind of guess that she's a fantastic sister, daughter, friend. She's got a fantastic social life as well. It's amazing. I'm actually very jealous all the time. Her PA tells me she gets hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of emails a day, and I know what her schedule is like because I try and book meetings and it takes about 6 months. She's back to back all day, every day, in a way that I don't think people at kind of like my level can necessarily really understand. So my first question is very much, do you take SheSays or gin? No, sorry. My first question is, strong coffee, no. My first question is essentially, how do you do it? But actually, I guess that's quite a vague and broad one. But primarily, how did you learn to do it from when you first started to now?
First of all, I hired you because you were brilliant. I do it with so much help, it's not even funny. I am a human self-help book, so I don't claim any expertise in having it all. I learned the hard way. Well, no, I didn't. Kim and I, so my old creative partner Kim Gerrig, who's now an extremely good director, we worked really hard for 6 or 7 years as creatives, and at that stage in my career, it was brilliant to work round the clock. It was really fun and really exciting, and so I'm talking kind of mid-20s maybe. And we travelled the world and we made lots of amazing work, and at that time my only responsibility was my career and fun with Kim and kissing boys and all that lovely mid-20s stuff. But now I'm 40 and I have a 7-year-old son and I have a very busy husband, and I run a house and I run a small grocery account called Tesco, and I run a department of about 80 to 100 people, and I help run an agency of about 500 people, and I think you can't possibly do that on your own, and I'm incredible at asking for help. I'm brilliant at asking for help, because I'm married to my poor husband. Like, he had no idea what he was getting into, but I fully expect 50-50 from my husband and the father of my child. I fully expect everyone to pull their weight at work. I have a life coach every single week. I meditate every single day. I am an absolute extrovert, so I get my energy from other people, so I depend really heavily on my friends and my family. And so without all of that help, I wouldn't be able to be sitting here today. But I thrive on, I'm very ambitious and I'm very driven, and I can only really achieve what I want because of the help.
But you're okay with asking for that help?
I love asking for help, because I feel like, with my life coach, and as I mentioned to you when you were talking, how lucky you are, to find a brilliant life coach or a coach that works for you. But Jesus Christ, I remember when I had my first phone, I do all my life coaching over the phone, because you can't not have a phone call, right? You can always not have a meeting. And I remember it was September 2013, and I had a phone call, my first phone call with my life coach, and I felt like I'd found the cheat sheet. Like I felt like I'd found the answer. And that's the trick.
That's pretty exciting. That's amazing. I guess it also doesn't necessarily mean that we all have to go off and spend thousands on life coaches, but actually we could perhaps also try and do it between ourselves, maybe a little bit. Because I do think that there is life coaching that happens between friends, but you have to find the right people who are going to be super on.
Yeah, I've used tricks and techniques and tools and exercises with girls, specifically girls at work, probably because they ask for help more. But I've gone through exercises with girls at work that I've gone through myself with my life coach, which has happened.
So we're spreading the love, right? We learn and then we spread the love, hence this. So one little anecdote actually is when I worked with you a few years ago, there was it was kind of a high pressure meeting that we were in. There was a deadline. There was lots of people buzzing around. Everyone was very febrile. Everyone was really stressed. And then you got a phone call from your son Buddy's school, and the phone call was that Buddy had fallen off something and had hurt himself. So Caroline quite rightly dropped everything immediately and just said, you know what, I've just got to go and I'm having the rest of the day off. And she had back-to-back meetings that afternoon, we had deadlines, we had client meetings, we had a lot of pressure on what we were doing that day. And actually, there were loads of people around Caroline who kind of were a bit snotty about it almost. They were like, well, when are you coming back? Or, well, what should we do about this deadline? And you brilliantly were just like, deal with it, I'm going. And that's kind of it. And that's the best lesson that I ever learned, I think. Like, in that experience was amazing. How did you do that? Or how do you find the strength to do that up against all the adversity around you?
Life is more important than work, and children are more important than colleagues, and you just need to have your priorities right. So when I went back to work full time at BBH, my coach again just said, listen, you give everything all the time. So you just need to have a cut-off point when you belong to BBH from 9 till 6, but 6:01 Buddy is the boss, and I love that as a phrase. So I've always been really, really clear. My boundaries are bulletproof. I'm very, very good at dividing my time, at saying no, at switching off, and I just know. I'm making absolutely no apologies for Buddy being more important than work.
But do you if you've got boundaries, do you compartmentalise? Do you kind of like switch mode? So I'm like wife mode now. I'm like
very rarely in my life. No, but I found this really quite second nature. So I'm very lucky that I can picture. It's a physical thing. I remember I used to walk out St John Street, at 200 St John Street, where Mother was based, and I'd leave my work at the door. And I've done that to this day, and actually being married to someone who's a founder of an agency who finds it really hard to switch off, it makes me even better at switching off because I'm demonstrating it's possible.
Oh, I like that. Learning from their mistakes in a way is pretty interesting.
Well, just it's one of I have very few major talents, but one of them is I'm very organised and I'm very disciplined at when what mindset I have to be.
And I find it quite interesting to know what your lines in the sand are. So for me personally, I have certain boundaries as well. Like I put my work phone, I have two separate phones, work and personal, that I keep very separately. I put my work phone in my bag when I leave work, or when I get off the train at the other end, and I don't pick it up again until I get on the train the next morning. Because if people need to get in contact, there's other channels, right? They can tweet me if they need to. Yeah, well, definitely Facebook. But then other boundaries, like I don't do these sorts of things on Wednesday nights. I have Wednesday night as sacrosanct because I see a therapist, which is really important every Wednesday night, and I'm very proud to say so. I don't hide that as well. So I'm interested to know what your kind of lines in the sand are. So buddy time is obviously Buddy's the boss, which is brilliant, right? Do you have other techniques to work?
Yeah, I mean they're not necessarily timetabled. I think it's just I'm very clear, and I think that's really helpful to the people that you work with. It's not I need to leave by 6. It's I'm leaving at 6. Or you just say it as it is, and I'm very generous with my time, and I hope that my teams feel like when they've got me, they've really got me. But I just think clarity and boundaries is the key to having control over your time and your energy.
That's actually a really good thing I've noticed as well with you is that you're not on your phone whilst being in meetings, so you're not trying to multitask and therefore not be there. Yeah, absolutely, and that's incredibly important. Like, multitasking is pretty evil in a way because it's expecting us to do lots of things at the same time and not do any of them well. So I think that multitasking is a bad thing. I think that's fascinating. Thank you, Caroline. By the way, we are having a questions thing at the end, so I'm just going to move to Nikki now. So Nikki is head of our Adam and Eve. Prior to that, she was in many great agencies, including Ogilvy, but actually she's been at Adam and Eve since the beginning, which is kind of the good old days, but perhaps the scary old days. I don't really know what it must have been like, because it's such a prestigious agency now, but at the very beginning I can imagine it possibly wasn't. How was your work-life balance back then?
You know, it was really crazy because I never even had time to think about how I feel. It was busy and brilliant and horrible and great and overwhelming, and it was just a little bit like you described your time, where it's just about the work, and you hang out with people who become your friends because you don't see your other friends anymore, so that's all you really have. And we were sitting too close to each other. I think it was probably illegal how like so you know everything about everyone, and you are one big, beautiful, dysfunctional family. So it was brilliant, but also exhausting.
But terrifying and exhausting.
Yeah, but you know, it's looking back, this was like my best time in advertising ever. It was brilliant.
So it's actually thriving, like some people thrive on the cusp of being just before burnout, which is actually part of your graph, I believe. And I think there is there's a really amazing point that's just before burnout that is thriving excitement, but just not tipping over into that burnout bit is the key, right? So just recognising that, and like Pip said earlier as well. So one fascinating thing actually that I found out about you, and kind of one of the big reasons actually why I asked you to speak, is definitely because you asked your bosses at Adam and Eve, who are very busy, if you could go down to work 4 days a week. So bearing in mind that you've got a really good job, you're that head of art, it's important, and you asked to go down to 4 days a week.
Yeah.
How was that?
That was a funny chat actually.
And why?
So then we merged with DDB, and we went from being this boutique little agency, we became this big corporate beast. And you know, at the same time, something big happened in my personal life, and I was just like, it doesn't feel like Adam and Eve anymore, it doesn't feel like me anymore, but I still love my job. But I started a different project, I did other stuff on the side, and they became more important, so I thought, oh, I want to cut down to 4 days. So I talked to my boss, who is brilliant, he's amazing. And I said to him, I want to do 4 days, and he's like, I really can't see that working at all, and I don't think it's a wise thing to do, and it would be different if you were pregnant or a mother. And I was like, I could pop out a baby to have a 4-day week, but then I'm not having time for all my other stuff, so it's beside the point. And then I went away and I thought, I pitched it completely wrong, because I told him why it would be great for me. I mean, really? That is really bad business thinking. And then I even thought about leaving the industry, and then I actually came up with a solution where I thought, how can I do this so it's really beneficial for the agency and myself? And now I'm doing 3 days. And the reason it works so brilliantly is there was this really good point being made earlier about your 2 hours of like mental clarity, while mine are at 8 in the evening. So for me to get a brief from the agency at 6 in the evening is a dream, because then I can sit down at 8 and I can work from home and nobody disturbs me, and I just knock it out and they have it at 11 in the morning and everybody's super happy, you know. It's just finding a way to make it work. But I had to present the solution, because all I did was like, I wanted without a solution, but I would leave them with lots of problems, like who's picking up the work when you're not there, how would the file handling work, all of this. I had to go away and find a solution, and once I presented the solution, it was a no-brainer. So now I have time to do my other stuff.
That's pretty amazing. I'd like to ask what your other stuff is, but only if you'll tell us.
Well, yeah, no, sure, it's fine. It's well, it makes me sound like a workaholic, but I love doing these things, so it feels more like play than work. But you know, I spent like 6 months of the years watching people taking photographs, so it was just a logic thing for me to pick up the camera myself. So I started shooting fashion photography, which is super exciting, and I wrote 2 books with a friend of mine, and we also did the photography for it, so they're like really fun coffee table books. And I started a really great little project called SheMochi, so we're doing emojis that are really missing on all our iPhones, and they're all period related and pubic hair related and girl related. So
love that. We're definitely sharing that. Yeah, let's have a little round of applause for that, because why is there more pubic hair emojis? Oh my goodness, as part of the Bush project at Mother, I can talk about pubic hair and talk cows campaigns. I'm not going to say that on Facebook Live actually, because I might watch, but there is a whole story about something. So anyway, so I would also like to ask though, so I think that's a fascinating and really, really inspiring story, but I guess what's kind of interesting is how you don't feel pressured to do more, because I know a lot of people, particularly mothers who do 4 days a week, do kind of feel like they cram 5 days work into 4 days and they feel pressured to do that or to like do just as much. How do you not let that pressure get to you?
You know, I was like super bad at this because I agreed to 3 days and I ended up working 6 days. And then I was like, oh, okay, I need to learn how to say no. This is super hard. I mean, it's so hard. It's the hardest lecture, but you know, only when you learn to do it and suddenly it works. And it's actually not a big deal when you do. But also, you know, when there is a shoot or a pitch or a big project, of course I will lose 5 days, 7 days. But you know, I get my time back, and as long as over 6 months I roughly get the ratio. So I think if you are flexible, other people will be flexible around you, and the more flexibility you can give, the more you will receive, hopefully.
Well, that's fascinating actually, and what is also really interesting, and actually also applied to what Caroline said, is when you kind of figure out what's the worst that's going to happen. Really, like nothing is going to, like really, there isn't a massive tragedy going to happen just because you say no to something or you turn it down. In fact, a little lesson was for me was when I was recovering from burnout, and Lucas, my creative partner, and I were freelancing at the time. We were only picking up the odd job here and there because of my health. So actually, we were asked to go and freelance somewhere. It was a pitch, and we refused to do pitches because of the hours involved. But they said, oh no, you know, we desperately want you, yada yada flattery. So we were like, okay, well, if you want us, we don't work evenings and we don't work weekends, so we'll do the pitch, but we're only going to be there 9 till 5. And we just thought, there's no way they'll let us do this is bonkers. And actually, we were like, well, we've just, like, you know, turned down a massive project, and that's really rubbish because we need the money. But actually, they just decided to hire 2 teams and have the other team work evenings and weekends, and we work 9 to 5, which is amazing. So the lesson is that guys don't really find it that hard to like put those lines in the sand actually, but we kind of find it a bit more problematic, because I never would have said that to the women on the thing. Anyway, thank you. That was totally amazing, Nikki, and it's really nice to hear from you. So I have a bunch of notes for Irene. Irene, is that how I say it, right? I'm saying it terribly, but you've got such a lovely Spanish accent.
In Spanish, you say Irene.
Irene, okay, I'm so bad at that, but I'm going to try. So Irene and I both work for Facebook, but weirdly we only met today, or in fact we only met tonight. And I had a bunch of questions down for Irene that we discussed before. I know, I'm just going to pronounce it badly and it's embarrassing, so, but we discussed beforehand. And then we ended up having a big old argument, so I'm not going to lie, she's an amazing woman, and we ended up having a big old argument. She's also like about 1 million like grades higher than me professionally, because this lady runs 2 countries. So she's the country director of Iberia, which is obviously Spain and Portugal. So she's kind of like got a big job, and it's a very important job. She's also amazing in that she's got fantastic illustrious history in tech. So she works at Google, she works at Yahoo. She's on basically all the panels, and she was named one of Spain's most influential women, which was mildly terrifying for me to like speak to her, but then also to argue with her about the questions that I was going to ask her. And I kind of want to explain a little bit about why we had that like fantastic debate that was incredibly enlightening to me, to be honest. But largely it was about the rules, I would say. It was fundamentally about breaking the rules and sticking with the rules, and actually what rules you can break and should break, and perhaps what rules you should stick to and can stick to, and also the notion with sticking to the rules of playing the game a little bit. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. She made me fly all the way from Spain. She gave my speech and then asked me questions. So, I will build on that. I think I've broken all the rules in life. But you need to understand which ones you can break. It's not that easy. And when you're young, it's not that easy to understand which ones are breakable. You need to understand, and you need to be able to foresee which things you want to give up in life or put down, and which things you want to prioritize. That's what I was trying to explain before. I had a speech that was called the cocktail dress, which was obviously a metaphor.
But explain, because I do think it's fascinating.
Well, basically, I was trying to explain that there are a lot of conventionalists in the market. When you're basically invited to an event, when you make it to the top, it's all about events and all about speaking engagement and all about receptions at the ambassador's house. So you get this invitation and it basically says dress code: men, suit with a tie; women, cocktail dress. And who the hell in this audience has actually shown up at 9 a.m. For a breakfast in a cocktail dress? Raise your hand. I mean, the best thing that can happen is that they think that you never made it home the previous night, which is not good. So when you're trying to do serious business. So it basically means that if you're a woman, because the man, be sure that he goes directly to the reception with his suit and his tie, you have to go home and do, who's in here seen A Fine Day, I think it's called, with George Clooney and Michelle Pfeiffer starring in there, when she's in the bathroom saving her legs and brushing her teeth all the time. That's basically you. And what I meant with this metaphor is that there are things that you actually have to give up, and some other things you have to comply with if you want to make it to the top. It's longer than that, but it's basically that. You need to understand what you want to do.
And actually then we moved on to, so that wasn't the bit that I argued about essentially. Actually it was about image and about how important image is in industry, but how important image is for women as opposed to image for men. And actually, I think, like, I may have seen the light, and you may have educated me, in that image is important, and necessarily fighting against that isn't going to win us any favours, but we have to do it in a way that is going to make us happy and fulfil us, right? So it's about your own self-image and looking after yourself holistically, right?
Yeah, it's about feeling happy about who you are. One of my top mantras in life is that life is like a mirror. It will smile at you if you smile at it. And the mirror is more generous with people that invest a little bit in themselves. And that is not only about expensive bags and good hairdressers. It's also about exercising, it's also about healthy eating, it's also about meditating, and it's also about taking time for yourself, which is something that people don't usually do. We were sharing.
We were absolutely sharing lots of personal stuff about how long it takes us to get ready in the morning and actually prioritising the stuff. So for me, I get ready in about 15 minutes, but then I do loads of other stuff that kind of almost prepares me for the day. So the looking good is not that important, you might know this. But for you, actually, and you do look gorgeous, but the looking good is actually more important, and it's kind of almost like a mental preparation thing.
Well, I've been selling all my life, which is, it puts me in a very tricky position if I don't show up the way they are expecting me. I lose part of what I've already gained if I show up there like in a very selling outfit. But when I talked about that it takes me 2 hours every morning to get ready, what I meant is that I am not an early bird, for example. At all. I'm a very late night person. I can prove that. My Facebook wall.
Spanish, right? That's given,
I'm
right?
Spanish.
I hope you have a siesta
I'm a
too.
late night person. But I force myself to wake up and get up very early because it takes me ages to speed up. I'm in like slow motion when I wake up, so I prefer to wake up at 6 in the morning and do my own meditation. I switch on the radio, I have a really long breakfast, and I have like my own Kit Kat from 6 to 8 to do my own stuff. I mean, you said that 8 o'clock in the evening is the moment where you said it, right? Well, for me that's impossible. The dog is trying to get my attention, the kid is trying to get my attention. I get tons of clients calling at that time. So for me 6 to 8 is my very own moment. And then it really takes me half an hour to get ready, have a shower, make up, and pick up the clothes. Sometimes it takes me a little bit more, but I prefer to wake up and have those 2 hours rather than just rushing out of my house because I haven't thought about what I have to do that day.
And that's your important work-life balance time in a way, because that preparation time is incredibly valuable to you in order to get yourself in a state, you were telling me, in order to get yourself in the kind of mental state of your day and preparing for your day. So I find that fascinating. I also, and this is slightly off work-life balance, if I'm honest, but I just actually found this fascinating, is when I asked you a question that was kind of a totally like a side question that I felt like I shouldn't ask. But we also have the big boss of EMEA, is Nicola Mendelsohn, Lady Nicola Mendelsohn, who's the boss of Facebook, who's also super glam. And you and Nicola and lots of other people in our industry who are sort of really at the top, I would say, in tech, kind of, you know, come onto stage looking super polished and super glam. And my question was, if you're so, and you are super glam and beautiful, but if you go into board meetings like that and everyone else there is like over 50 white men, do you not feel like they're judging you on how you look more than what you say or your brain? And I know you're super brainy, but your answer to this was fascinating.
I mean, I think that it comes with maturity, I think. But you have to know your assets, and you have to play them correctly or use them wisely. No one is going to judge you based on your outfit or on your aspect. If when you start talking, you just narrow things or you just skip. So you and sometimes your aspect could actually force them to judge you, but use it wisely. And use it wisely does not mean that you have to play with your... That's an awful thing to do because you will position yourself the wrong way. Use it wisely. It could be a defensive weapon. You will be managing the situation and you will talk when you want and you will position your arguments what you want.
And actually, also you said earlier, it surprises them, because the moment I open my mouth, they think that I'm going to not be as smart as I am, and then it totally throws them all off guard, and then it's like almost a totally different playing field in the room, which I thought was fascinating.
Well, we fight against the elements, obviously, because we are women, and I mean, obviously women on boards across Europe are around 70% at this point, so you would be actually obviously underrepresented in there. Then we are digital, and then we are young. So it's how did you say? You said that in English, triumvirate.
Triumvirate,
Yeah.
good word. Triumvirate.
The three things together are like the most scary thing on earth. I mean, they run away from you like if their hair was on fire.
That is terrified of beautiful women.
They are
That's basically what it is.
but I mean, if you use that wisely, you can position any argument you want, and it will be a winning one.
I like that. I think that's interesting. Again, we've got questions at the end, so I'm going to broaden it out and speed through so there's time for questions. So, Vicky, finally, Vicky, with the silver shoes at the end there that are pretty glowing at me and I'm pretty impressed by. So, Vicky is a Leicester lass, and I'm from Leicester as well, so my accent's about to go really, really Leicester. In it. I've got an A up my duck poster at home actually due to a Vicky conversation. Have you got it as well? Yeah. So anyway, so Vicky is kind of a legend, I think, in advertising. Vicky is kind of one, she really is. And that doesn't mean that you're like super old and you're going to get that Lifetime Achievement Award, you're not there yet. But you are a legend in British advertising, and I would say that you're also at all of the talks, the events, the do, and you don't turn them down, you know, like, you haven't got $2,000 to do all of the, like, the really, really, really super helpful book crits for people who really need it, and I think that's pretty amazing, because we know how busy your schedule is, actually just as much as Caroline's. But one thing that I've really noticed, being around you and doing some things with you occasionally, is how very, very chilled and sanguine you are. How do you remain so very sanguine all the time?
Oh, fuck knows.
Unless the people swear.
Yeah. I think, do you know what it is? I think it's age, I think it's experience, and I think you get to a point at any time in your career where basically this is what you get. And if you don't like it, will part company and I should go somewhere else. And if you do like it and you embrace it and you can see what value I can add, I will hold your coat and I will walk over past for you. I've worked in a lot of agencies and I kind of like, I think to your point, you get to know yourself and your strengths and your weaknesses, and I get to know when I can write early. I'm 5 o'clock in the morning, which is terrifying, but I know that that's my time.
Isn't it amazing by 10 a.m. you realise you've done 5 hours work? It's so
Yeah, seriously, and that's,
I'm there.
and you know yourself. There are bits that I've missed. I've missed the yoga and the nut eating, and that's the chocolate cupboard, which I'm very good at. But also what I have learned as well, which I think as an industry we need to take a bit more responsibility for, is that burnout isn't always our fault, right? We should identify it, we should recognise the symptoms, but look at the culture of the agency that you are in. Because things are changing at the moment, but there are a lot of toxic places out there that run on the old boys club bollocks mentality, which is if you are not at your desk at 8 o'clock, then you're not working hard enough. And you can see it. I'm not going to mention their name, but I've been in agencies where the whole of the agency will be in the departments at 8 o'clock, but they'll be eating their breakfast and they'll be reading the paper. They just need to be seen, right? Or you're not working late enough. You're not there at 9 o'clock, they're playing pool. They're just there to be seen. And it's this toxic culture which kind of says, this has got to be visible. And it's not about quality of work, and it's just, show up and be seen. And that is bollocks. Yeah, so you have to be responsible for your own time management. And the one thing we have to do, which we're not very good at as women, is to put your hand up and say, you know what? I'm going to burn out. Now, any creative director, any ECD, worth their salt, any manager, worth their salt, will look at you when you come to them and say, you know what? I've noticed that there's a couple of projects, my eyes have been out a little bit, I think I'm going to need to take a bit of time. It's in their interests to let you go and do your thing, because you're going to come back and you'll be back 100%. If you don't get that response, if they go, fuck off, I'm putting you on a pitch, you're in the wrong place, fuck out. Seriously. I've got a lot of coping mechanisms, but when I was a kid coming through, the biggest thing that I could ever do was have what I used to call my 3-month fuck off fund, right? Which was 3 months savings, which was my rent, my bills, my Top Shot habit, I never touched that. But it meant that if I was sitting in somewhere that wasn't right, and I've probably been in 12 to 14 agencies. If it didn't feel right and it wasn't for me, I wasn't going to try to fix it internally, because I was obviously the lone voice. I was going to fuck off, right? And if you are good and if you have that confidence, especially as women at the moment, you are going to get another job within 3 months. So look at them, think, it's not my thing really, and fuck off.
Love. That was swearing. Amazing. That's very good.
I couldn't not swear.
And I think that the whole being almost responsible for your own time is really important. And actually, it's weird because I think as creatives we're often treated like children a little bit. And actually, if we start acting a little bit more like adults and taking responsibility and that includes for our own time, but also kind of insisting that the people above us let us take responsibility for our own time, and they will do. As the industry cultures are all changing anyway, I think what it enables us to do is work to our strengths, because, for example, I know I work brilliantly at 5 a.m. in the morning, but actually I might want to leave work at 4 in the afternoon because I've been working since 5 in the morning. Or actually, my working life here, I'm going to tell you about it. Actually, I think my boss is here, he's at the back, but he will not mind me telling you this, but I work like a beast on Mondays because I'm raring to go. I'm all or nothing. I'm quite a black and white person. I'm a workaholic, as I said. So I work like an absolute maniac on Mondays, less on Tuesdays, less on Wednesdays, less on Thursdays, and by Friday I try and do as little as I can possibly get away with doing. because I'm kind of like I'm a bit spent by then. And it's not to say that I don't do meetings and I don't do the stuff that's necessary to be done, but he champions that because he knows that ultimately the balance of the week all adds up to me being super productive, but I don't have to do it in the usual schedule that everyone expects that I have to do it in. So that is a great learning for me in my experience, and thank you, Nick, because you totally just nailed that for the whole industry, and we're all going to change that going forward. And because you've got contacts as well with the C-suite and all the agencies in London, you're just going to basically constantly tell them that, aren't you? That's pretty good. So Vicky is really, really super busy and has a really important job, but then decided that she clearly wasn't busy enough a few years ago. So you opened a sweet shop.
Yeah, I've got a sweet shop on Columbia Road called Second Chew. And it's only open at weekends, it only opens on Sundays. And it is, everybody goes, oh my God, look, you work 6 or 7 days a week. But it's all about energy. And it's, when you know that whole kind of thing that your parents say, oh, change is good as a rest. If you do something that is a different energy to your everyday, it's as exciting and as kind of like fulfilling as doing a totally different job. It's brilliant. I can't tell you, anybody that's creative here and it's like you do an ad, it goes into research, you don't see it for 6 months, the client buys it, the client changes it, you make it, blah, 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 blah. Right, if you've got a sweet shop, you're selling quarters of sugar, people hand you money over and say thank you. And that circle is complete. A lot of my friends like make stuff. You know the satisfaction you get when you paint a wall, or you do something right, or you finish something. We very rarely get that in advertising, and if we do, it's a prolonged experience. So the fact that somebody can come into my shop, go, oh, quarter of bonbons, I'll weigh them out, because I'm always working there, so it's like, if I didn't work there, it would be my hobby, it would be like paying somebody else to paint, you know what I mean? And then they hand over money, and they eat one, and they say thank you. That's just fucking brilliant. And so, I think therapy projects and therapy energies are really important. And if I don't work in the shop, I don't do anything on a Sunday, I just go bleh. So it's an adrenaline thing, and apparently, so I'm told it's like exercise, but I wouldn't know. But I think you should all find as many projects, and it's like, you were saying, Nikki, it's kind of like, if you've got 3 or 4 things on the go, they're each at a different energy level, and are finishing at different times, and they kind of fuel you, don't they? And that's brilliant. So if you think you're working really, really hard, go and find something else to do, because it's incredible the energy that you get from that. That makes sense.
Hallelujah, yeah, it totally does. Side projects are everything.
Yeah,
in fact, I swear that I have gotten pretty much all of my jobs from the side projects that I do, not the actual work that I do. Actually, that's probably why you hired me, isn't it? Because I write stuff on the side and legal administration that we do. And those side projects, like you said, actually are fuel, and they're building. They're not a drain of your time. I think often that you can think, because it's time, you kind of think that it's going to be a sacrifice or it's going to put more pressure on your work-life balance, but actually I think it's probably something that energises you, and that's really important.
I mean, at various stages in your career, you will find yourselves in places or on projects that aren't fulfilling, right? And trust me, it is more energy sapping and morale lowering, for want of a better word, to work doesn't fuel you, right? And that can lead to a different kind of burnout, because that frustration and that mental energy you burn because you're not being fulfilled is as dangerous if you go full pelt at something 100 miles an hour. So if you find yourself like that and you haven't got your fuck off fund because you haven't started it yet, and you should. Start to find a second project. You think you're too tired. You think actually working on something that is a little bit boring really does sap your energy. And you leave work and you're like, fucking hell. You drag yourself home to get to Corrie if you're lucky. Find a second project that really fulfills you. Whether it's a book, whether it's a whatever it is, just do it. And you will find your levels and your interest really, really peak.
Fantastic, that's great, because I'm doing all of those things
Yeah,
inside and making me feel
exactly.
better on it already. I might go home and do some writing. So one thing that I wanted to talk to you about as well is a little bit literally about lifestyle, in that actually you live in the East End of London, which is, and actually you live in the city pretty close,
Yeah.
don't you, as well? And I'm interested to know how you kind of do that and don't feel like you need the time to just escape all the time, because it's such a frantic pace of life. I've noticed that I try and walk, after coming back from a yoga retreat, I've been trying to walk slower when I get off the train and walk through the tube station. It just pisses everybody off. It's not really possible. So how do you kind of like live in the city and not get exhausted from that?
I think, do you know what, I don't know. I mean, I was brought up around chaos. You know, we're from Leicester, right in the middle of the town centre. My mum and dad had a store on Leicester Market. Everybody's up really early. You know, small house, loads of kids. Da, 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 da. You had to eat quick because the dog would get it. You know, all that kind of shit. Right? So I was kind of brought up like that, right? And I thought I was in an agency that I wasn't getting fulfilled and yada yada yada. And then I got a phone call and it was somebody offering me a job in Sydney. And I was like, ooh, Sydney. So I went over and I got this job. And the first thing that most Poms do when they get to Sydney is they go and live by the beach. It's like Bondi, which basically is like Camden, but with a beach. Everybody there is like from North London. You know, you don't hear an Aussie accent. You just kind of go, oh, I remember you. Yeah, seriously. And Bondi is beautiful. You know, the sun rises, everybody's on the beach doing their sun salutations and their banging drums and they're doing all this kind of stuff. I have never been so bored in my life. Seriously. I was like, okay, I've made a mistake here. I don't look good in a wetsuit. You know, I got stuck in the downward dog. It was like, it's so tried. And I stuck it out for 18 months because I thought I can't come home. People had bought me presents to leave. You know what I mean? You're like, shit, well, I've already come back with a warranty on my iPod as run out. So I really did try. It just wasn't me. And I got back to London and I walked around Soho. This is going to sound really pervy, but I walked around Soho just to get the smell of dirty Soho back in my, you know what I mean? And then I went to Topshop. Just to see people and buy stuff. And that's when I realised that I actually thrive on that chaos and that churn and that raw energy. You know, punk came from London. There will never be, with all due respect, there will never be a Sydney sound. Do you know what I mean? It's too nice. Everybody's too chilled. There isn't that kind of energy that I need.
Oh wait, you need to tell us about Nice, Caroline.
What?
Nice.
What about that?
You said in the toilets earlier something brilliant about Nice being the system.
Oh God, yeah.
Was it?
Oh, that was John Bartle gave a whole speech on leadership, which was absolutely mind-blowing. But one of his provocations was, nice is the neighbour of weak.
Yeah.
Ooh. Those women out there who want to be nice all
And
the
I was
time.
kind of like, well, I felt half like offended and half interested.
It's pretty controversial.
It is controversial and it's not true. I think the point that he was making is right though, which is, you know, we have a tendency to not want to upset people. And sometimes you dangerously might carry on with an idea that you shouldn't have or whatever.
You upset yourself in the process of not upsetting other people. Maybe. Maybe. There's another thing that's similar to that which I found fascinating, which is that angry is the bodyguard of scared, which I think is totally true. In that when you meet angry people, it's probably because they're really nervous about something or really scared about something, just like animals. So anyway, I found that fascinating. Sorry, Vicky, we went off on the tangent.
No, that's cool. I think you're right. But then it's like when you go into a room, you know, and you think like, oh, here we go. You know, you look down the tables and they're pale and they're male and they're stale. And you say, here we go. This is going to be really interesting. Who's going to be the first one to swear? It's going to be me, and they're going to be shocked. But you know, they've all got their problems in there, and you just kind of say, okay, you know. And you're right. As soon as you open your mouth and you talk sense, and they start to see, you know, less of your tips and more of a bottom line, then you know that you've owned that meeting.
Nailed it.
You've nailed it.
I like nailing it, that's good. Right, I'm going to bring, actually, if Eve and Pip don't mind joining, I'm going to bring them up on stage, and then we've got questions. So there's a microphone just here at the front, and please be brave enough to come and ask a question. So just come and stand at the microphone. But I implore you to be super brave and come. Oh no, you don't need another chair actually. I'm going to just come. Or we can shove after if you want actually. The lady. Oh no, come and join me and sit here and get close and we'll hug up. Just because we can sit together, right? We can totally sit together. So please come and ask some questions, people. Go on, be brave. I can tell you're all too nervous, right? Hey, thank you. Sorry you have to get to the mic in the middle. We were going to do that whole like running around thing with the mic, but then it was a bit too exhausting. So give it up. Hello, thank you. What's your name and perhaps where you work first?
My name's Sheila. I work at Lambie Aaron as a strategy director. So recently rejoined WPP. So I have 2 questions. My first is for Vicki. So I have a fuck off fund, and I've exercised that fund a few times.
Yeah.
But when I look at my